Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Kathancha bhikkhave rupaṅ. Dear Venerable Brother, dear Dhamma friends, so as you all know, we are discussing a Sutta teaching so that we can derive some information, we can get some guidance from the Buddha's teaching to our practice. So basically, last couple of months, we were discussing one Sutta which is called Yavakalapi Sutta. Actually, the 5 different ways of thought formations were discussed. A very interesting sutta, and if you are interested, you can refer the past records. And I thought of taking another new sutta to discuss this time, and which is coming in the Sangyutta Nikaya Khanda Sangyutta, and the name given is called Upadana Parivatta Sutta. So the English translation is given as 4 phases of clinging aggregates. Now, so the Buddha's teaching is primarily, we can say, give a different perspective about our experience. Sometimes we take things so personally, and sometimes we give too much emphasis on the conventions, and then we strictly adhere to those conventions. And then we can even argue, we can get into quarrels, and we can get into wars even with respect to those conventions. And we get trapped in the conventions. Now, on such a situation, so what are we experiencing? Who we are? What am I? So those kind of questions also are there. And sometimes if we are attributing a self into our whole experience, so Buddha mentioned, we can have various kinds of doubts. For example, in the Sabbasava Sutta, so with respect to the past, so you can think, where were, or rather, was I, or wasn't I? From where did I come to the past life? How was I? And then if you consider the present life, how am I? Am I exist, or am I does not exist? How am I feel? So from this life, where am I going to reborn? And maybe with respect to the future, you can think, okay, where am I going to be reborn? Will I have the future life, future birth? And after passing away from that life, where would I go further? So likewise, with respect to a self-view, we can have so many different kinds of thoughts. And ultimately, we end up with a kind of a confusion or a kind of a perplexity. So all these things are there because we attribute a self into the whole picture. We attribute a self, what we call as an individual, into this whole experience. And as a result of that, we actually get into all kind of troubles. But on the other hand, for the typical mundane way of life, we need such convention also. So individually, when we are recognizing each other, so the conventions are very useful. Individually, we have our unique, very fairly unique names and gender differences, and all the different kinds of those distinctions are there, so that we can recognize each other separately. And on the other hand, different names are given, labels are given, past tense, present tense, future tense are given, different, say, grammar is there, deflections are there. So all these different things are there so that we can describe a particular situation using words, using grammar, using sentences, etc. Now therefore, in that sense, we can say conventions are also useful. But unfortunately, we are getting too adhered to these conventions, and the so-called I, the so-called person, an individual, become fairly excessively highlighted, and then we very much get trapped in it, and later we think, here I am exist. I am a person, I am an individual. So that individuality is something that we promote. Constantly we promote individuality. We want to be a special person. And this so-called special person is experiencing special experiences, going through various experiences. So likewise, our way of life become in a way fairly complicated, because each individual is considering as they are very, very special and they have their own private worlds, and there are ways to communicate, conventions, all these things are there. So you need a fair amount of complex mind to live in this world in that sense. Say if a very old person coming from the past, if they immediately come here to this life, he may feel very uncomfortable because he can't understand all these traffic light, all today's conventions. Those are very complicated in a way. Now, on the other hand, now Buddha give a different way of interpretation to this whole experience using 5 aggregates. So these 5 aggregates are very important and for us to understand, and not only through the kind of theoretical understanding, but how are we going to experience them. So therefore, to each aggregate, so there are 4 phases introduced in this particular sutta. It's very, very interesting, and typically we don't talk to that descriptive level, but we are very much like trying to understand practically about the aggregates. Yes, true, but the way properly described in this sutta in a way help us to understand more deeply about the 5 aggregates. So what are the 5 clinging aggregates? Can anyone answer? What are the 5 clinging aggregates? So you all have heard, right? Rupa Upadana Khandha, the clinging aggregate of form. Then Vedana Upadana Khandha, the clinging aggregate of feelings. Sanya Upadana Khandha, the clinging aggregate of perceptions. Then Sankhara Upadana Khandha, the clinging aggregate of mental formations. And then Vijnana Upadana Khandha, the clinging aggregate of consciousness. So the clinging aggregate, so that means, so a person, we can, for the time being, let's call a person, and a person with a fair amount of greed, craving, can easily get clung to any of the aggregates. So, and on the other hand, this so-called person and his experience, we can divide or understand with respect to these 5 aggregates. Say for example, now you all are listening. So even this simple activity of listening, if you are very much clung to the voice or to the sound, or say probably not to my voice, if you are listening to a music, probably you may get clung to it easily. On such situations, we can say, okay, your attention is more derived towards the form aggregate, because sounds, smells, tastes, the sight, tangibles, all of them are coming onto the materiality and to the form aggregate. And various feelings what we go through, maybe pleasurable feelings, painful feelings, equanimous feelings, so they all come under the feeling aggregate. And how we recognize using names, shapes, styles, colors, names, words. So all of them may come under the perceptions aggregate. And what we think and what we intentionally do, intentionally speech, think, all of them come under the formations aggregate. And using the 6 senses, whenever we do kind of a cognition, so that whole cognitive processes comes under the consciousness aggregate. So likewise, it's a fairly comprehensive way of looking at the whole picture. and particularly this kind of animate experience using the Buddha's teaching. Now, in this sutta, so therefore, Buddha make a very interesting statement like this. Yava kivancha aham bhikkhave ime pancha upadana khande chatu parivattang yatha bhutang nabbhanyasing neva tavaham bhikkhave sadevake loke samarake sabrahmake sassamana brahmaniya pajaya sadeva manussaya anuttarang samma sambodhin abhisambuddhoti paccanyasing. So when I am sort of repeating this statement, probably have you get any kind of a memory about this kind of a statement? Where? Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So some similar statement Buddha give here, if you can remember in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So with respect to the Four Noble Truths. So Buddha make a statement, so with respect to Four Noble Truths and all those 12, the 12 explanations, so 12 more detailed explanation about the Four Noble Truths. So when I didn't have a comprehensive understanding about those 12 aspects, till I haven't understood that, I didn't declare myself as a Buddha, Samma Sambuddha. But the moment I had a comprehensive understanding about those 12 aspects, then I declare, yes, I am a Samma Sambuddha. Similarly here also. So Buddha makes a kind of a declaration. So till I didn't have a proper understanding, Chatuparivattang, about the 4 phases of these 5 clinging aggregates, I didn't declare myself as a Buddha among these so-called folk. Comes under the human, maybe Brahmas, Devas, ascetics. So all different kinds of folk. I didn't declare myself as a Buddha. But the moment I had the understanding, Yathochako aham bhikkhave ime panchupadana khande Chatuparivattang yatha bhutang abbanyasing. So the moment I had the comprehensive understanding about these 4 phases of to the each and every aggregate, then I declared myself as a Buddha, Samma Sambuddha. So you can see kind of understanding to these 5 aggregates has become one of the salient understanding of the Buddha's his capacity or to become a Samma Sambuddha. So he has to have a thorough understanding to all these 5 aggregates. And sometimes, so he describes the whole experience using these 5 aggregates in many, many suttas. So there are a separate sangyukta, we can say a collected discourses totally talking about these 5 aggregates. Khanda Sangyukta, the collected discourses on the aggregates. So this is a very important, a key teaching of the Buddha are these 5 aggregates. And particularly you can see, if you consider the 5 aggregates, among those 5 aggregates, the first one only talks about the matter or the physicality, and the other 4 are talking about some mental aspects, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. So all these are fairly intangible, and they are talking about the mental aspects. But form aggregate, on the other hand, talks about certain physical aspects. Now today, so we are going to discuss the first one, the first aggregate, that is the form aggregate. And in this sutta, Buddha explained the 4 phases and again each and every aggregate, and try to give a kind of a theoretical understanding, and again we can connect it to some practical understanding as well. How are we going to thoroughly, practically experience these aggregates? So where are these aggregates? Where are they? Is it maybe in the supermarket you're going to get a buy and you need to spend money to buy them, purchase them? No, right? I mean, we are five aggregates. So called my experience. So I am. So all these things actually we can explain with respect to five aggregates. So that's the beauty. So the Dhamma is immediately applicable within yourself. It is not that you are going to look at five aggregates outside. Rather, you have to look at aggregates within yourself. How bhikkhus are the four phases? Now Buddha explained first about the four phases. What we call the Chatu Parivatta. So the different attributes into these the five aggregates. Rupang abbanyasing, rupa samudayang abbanyasing, rupa nirodhang abbanyasing, rupa nirodhagamining patipadang abbanyasing. Now with respect to each aggregate, now Buddha say, okay, I have understood in four different ways. First, rupang, the direct knowledge about the form, and the direct knowledge about its origin, direct knowledge about its cessation, and the direct knowledge about the way leading to its cessation. Now here actually we can simply memorize it and then probably even take it to the next level, and we can say, okay, that means direct knowledge to the feelings, direct knowledge to the, say, origin of the feelings, direct knowledge to the cessation of the feelings, and direct knowledge to a path leading to the cessation of the feelings. So likewise we can recognize 4 into 5, 20, isn't it? So that is what we need to comprehensively understand in a way, and once Buddha understood that thoroughly, comprehensively, then only he declared he's a Samma Sambuddha. Now what is form? Now he is going to describe what is form. Katamancha bhikkhave rupang chattarocha mahabhuta chatunnancha mahabhutanang upadaya rupang. Now 4 great elements and the form derived from those 4 great elements. Now when we call like this, so it's very much like Greek, you don't understand what are these 4 great elements. So where are they? I mean, we can say within ourselves as well as in the outside. Now, the form aggregate. So this is the place that we can easily start our practice. So now if we look at outside and if we look at our own bodies, so we can say, yes, this is the form aggregate in one sense. And on the other hand, still what we see is, say I am wearing a robe, you are wearing kind of clothes, and outside there is fan available, door available, fan available, so different things are available. So is it the form aggregate? So that these are in a way, so when form aggregate comes together in many different forms, so in order to distinctly recognize, we as humans have given many names. We have attached a label, we have sticked a label to the accumulation of this form aggregate, and then we can distinctly recognize, okay, this is a fan, this is say fan, another different form of fan, this is a mic, this is a recorder. So likewise we are attributing various names, but still in general we can say these are all forms. By giving names, are we complicating the aggregates, or rather say form aggregate, or are we simplifying the form aggregate? What do you think? Simplifying, right? Okay, we'll see. Now suppose when we are practicing, say using which satipatthana are we going to understand form aggregate? So is it possible to understand form aggregate deeply? So are we understanding form aggregate by going through a science, say in terms, say physics? So you can now, so we are talking, say we need to understand form aggregate. So is it okay to go through physics, chemistry, and all different kinds of physical sciences what we have today? Will that give us the proper understanding about the form aggregate? So then why? I mean, isn't that they are analyzing the form aggregate? Aren't they working on the form aggregate? They too are working on the form aggregate, isn't it? Say the physicians or the, say, scientists, physicists. So, I mean, you can call chemists or whatever. I mean, innumerable number of different areas are there. And we can say, okay, so you can go in through all these different areas, sections. See, we are trying to understand these physical forms, different matters. And now they have gone to the, say, I heard somewhere recently they have gone, maybe, what's that, recently to another planet? I don't know. Anyway, so are we exploring this form aggregate? Will that give us comprehensive understanding about the form aggregate? Will that give us what Buddha expects by understanding the form aggregate? So is that the aim? So these are something that we can actually honestly recognize, because sciences today are giving a thorough explanation about all these matters, and that is their main goal, understanding all these deep information. But on the other hand, Buddha, why he wants us to understand form aggregate, and why the scientists are trying to understand form aggregate, and their objectives, if we consider, are completely different. By understanding form aggregate from the scientific point of view, we are trying to get some advantage. We are going to earn some dollars. But on the other hand, by thoroughly understanding the form aggregate from the Buddhist point of view, for what purpose? To let go of it, to have kind of detachment for that. So that's why in another sutta, Katamancha bhikkhave rupang vadeta, kincha bhikkhave rupang vadeta. So Buddha asks, why, monks, is it called rupa? Why is it called rupa? Ruppatiti ko bhikkhave rupang vadeta, tasma rupanti uchchati. So since it is subject to changes, subject to various kind of deformations, it's very weak, very feeble. And even a mosquito bite, you can, nowadays spreading, right? Even a mosquito bite, you can be hospitalized, you can even die. Even with hunger, you can die. Even with hunger, you might feel faintish. Even with thirst, you feel faintish. And even the heat, even the cold, are all these external factors have great impact onto this so-called body, so-called form. So therefore Buddha say that is ruppatiti. So it is subject to change due to various these external factors. So therefore this form element in a way is utterly feeble. Now Buddha's definition and the scientist definition are therefore a completely different way of looking at it. So when we are thoroughly trying to understand the form aggregate, so the Buddha's objective is to looking at it from this perspective. So more we understand, more we have kind of a detachment to the form aggregate. Not to earn a Nobel Prize or, to earn dollars or going to another planet, or that is not the perspective, that is not the objective. But understanding the form aggregate will lead to a dispassion, disenchantment within the yogi's mind. Now, in order to thoroughly understand the form aggregate, so we are having Kayanupassana. So therefore in the Kayanupassana, we can say many different way of looking at the form aggregate is available. Now if you look at Anapanasati, so you are understanding the ongoing bodily process. So we typically neglect it. We taken it for granted. But when you are aware, this body is breathing. It's an ongoing process. So you come to a sense as, okay, this body is breathing. So you now, the way you looking at it is little different. And most importantly, you start looking at it from an objective point of view. Rather than subjectively thinking, okay, I am breathing, I am so and so. My breathing is, say, not healthy or whatever it is. But you can look at how this body is breathing. So you are very much like an outsider. You are very much like witnessing this breathing process. Now, in order to understand, now even this is common to the scientific research. Now, if you want to make a research, are you participating into the research and continuing that, or are you very much behaving like an independent researcher and trying to do the research? What is your way of doing it? What do you think? Now say you are changing the whole process and you are participating and you want to manipulate the thing and you are doing the research. Is it the correct approach, or you simply become complete detached from the process and then allow the process to naturally flow and then you do the proper research? So the second one, right? So same thing is available here also, even in Anapanasati. So we are learning this, what we call in Pali as parato. So how to look at breathing even from a outside point of view. So you are not doing any kind of manipulations. How are you allowing the body to process naturally? And you become an outsider. You are not manipulating, you are not participating into the process as much as possible and trying to understand this whole process. In that sense, we can say it's a proper science or proper scientific research in a way. And it takes time. It is not an outside process now we are observing, but very much attached to this very body. So in order to see your own body, how it is breathing, and properly understand that, so you have to have kind of a fair detachment to the whole thing, and then only you can look at it objectively. So it may take time. So that's why as a beginner, sometimes we confuse the whole process. We unnecessarily participate the process and we forcefully breathe. So all these mistakes can happen. But later only we understand, okay, not necessary to do like that. This body knows how to breathe. Let it breathe. Let me as an outsider, let's just look at this body, how it is breathing. Let it breathe as it like. I don't need to control. So this perspective is utterly important. And it is something that we are using that perspective throughout the Satipatthana process. How to look at a particular process, how to look at a particular experience as an outsider. Not interrupting the process. Not putting your own likes and dislikes into the process. As much as possible. I can't say it's a complete detached process anyway. But as much as possible, we are trying our best not to interrupt the process, not to color the process, not to condition the process using our own judgments. And then only we can take a, say, fairly neutral observation. Now in Satipatthana, so this is, we can see from many different ways. So one experience is this, that allowing the body to breathe naturally, and now we are looking at it from this perspective. So you may get a different understanding about this body now. It is not me breathing. Who is breathing? The body is breathing. Isn't it? So the body is breathing. So maybe I will put it like I am looking at it, I am watching it, so body is breathing. We can put it like that, even that is not correct. But anyway, So the body independently breathes. I have no much control and I am simply watching it. And now it is changing its phases. I mean, it's maybe longer, shorter. So likewise, many different phases are there. Sometimes you see the breathing happens like very far, and you like observing from a very far place. And sometimes you feel like it's very, very closely you are watching it. And sometimes you feel that breathing has become fairly gross. And sometimes you might feel the breathing has become very refined. And sometimes breathing is very subtle, or breathing gives a lot of satisfaction, kind of happiness, joy while you are experiencing it. Previously, I mean, it was very boring and you feel drowsy, you feel quite bored when you are observing it. But now assume that each breath is producing a lot of joy within you. So likewise, many different forms you can see. So that's why even though we call it form aggregate, so Buddha give a kind of a comprehensive explanation to the aggregate by adding 11 aspects. Atita, Anagata, Pachuppanna, Ajjatta, Bahidda, Olarika, Sukuma, Hina, Panita, Dura, Santika. Atita, Anagata, Pachuppanna. So with respect to the past, with respect to the future, with respect to the present. Then Ajjatta, Bahidda, internal and external. Olarika, Sukuma, gross and subtle. Hina, Panita, inferior, superior. Dura, Santika, far and near. So all these different ways, it is not that we are trying to as I said, manipulate this breathing and try to understand all these 11 aspects, but as it manifests naturally, as it unfolds naturally, you may get different phases of these 11 aspects. So that's another, it's a broader understanding now you are getting about even the breathing. Now, not only that, say if you look at even today we just talked about rising and falling. So this rising and falling is another process happens within the body. And even this rising and falling, you can look at from these many different aspects, different ways. It is not that we are trying to impose those, rather time to time you may feel it. You may feel like, say, I am closely looking at it, or this process happened a little far away and now I am looking at it. And each rising appear like very beautiful and I am looking at it. Very subtle and I am looking at it. It become very gross and I am looking at it. So likewise, so your experience, how you are sort of experiencing it, can be very kind of varied. Now, that is one way of looking at the whole process. These are, say, physical processes, and you are trying to understand how they are manifesting, how they are evolving, how they are changing. So that is one area. On the other hand, what are you learning by looking at it as loathsome in Asubha Bhavana? So that is also coming in the Kanupassana. So typically, we recognize this body belongs to me. We recognize this body is myself. And or either I am in this body, or I am within this body, or body is within me. So many different ways we can look at the body, identify with it. But that leads to kind of a conceit. In case this body is in the prime youth and you looks great, you looks beautiful, you looks kind of in prime healthy state, and you might get kind of a conceited. And you even have kind of a lust, even to your body or even to the other's body. So the lustful thoughts also can arise. So when lustful thoughts are there, so it has fairly colored the mind, conditioned the mind. So your mind may be sort of has lost its proper perspective. Now you need to bring it back to the neutral state. Now, as we just discussed, now if you are to do a proper research, so you have to have that neutral attitude within you. So if you get a kind of elated attitude, if you get kind of a lustful attitude, so that means you are not maintaining that neutral position. So by doing Asubha Bhavana, in that sense, so you are again bringing back your mind to the neutral level. It is not that mainly that you are trying to have a kind of depressive, completely, rejecting the body and you want to commit suicide. So that is not the objective. Sometimes even that has happened. During the Buddha's time, so certain monks, so they practice, or we can say over-practiced Asubha Bhavana. What happened ultimately? So they invited one of the person to kill themselves. So they keep killing the monks. So they invite, please kill me. You can take all these robes. So then only Buddha actually preached Anapanasati. So we sometimes misuse these techniques. So the main goal of the technique is to bring your mind back to the normal, equal, or we can say neutral way of looking at things. Not that you are coming to reject the body, or you want to get rid of the body, or become depressed about the body. Rather, you become kind of neutral. Assume that you are burning with lustful thoughts, maybe with respect to your own body or to someone else's body. At that time, you are not in your typical terms. Now you need to bring it back to the typical terms, typical norms, that neutral position. So you do a little bit of Asubha, looking at it from the loathsome point of view. As a result of that, now lust fades off and you are coming back to the neutrality. So that is the point. Now Buddha gave a very interesting simile there. So he say various grains are there. Say paddy is there, greens are there. So many different grains are there. And you take one, fist, right? Fist to your hand. And now can you look at what are they? You can see, right? I mean, this is green bees, so I don't know the terms. Dal, or I mean in today's terms, dal, say ginger, what's that? Gingerly, and green bees. So different names are given. So once you take from to your hand, you can easily look at it. So by looking at it, are you becoming lustful to them or are you becoming angry to them? No. So, I mean, this is simply looking at it. So the same simile Buddha is given to Asubha Bhavana. So you can see how deviated we were when we are typically taking Asubha Bhavana. So we even, get a wrong, bad smell about it when we call it Asubha Bhavana. But when we are looking at it properly, so we become more neutral. We can see, this body has, say, lungs, this body has, say, saliva, this body has blood. So different body parts are there. So you are looking at it properly. So previously you couldn't recognize like that. So you were with lustful state. But when you are looking at it properly, now that lust is gone, now you come to the proper neutral way of looking at the body. So that is Asubha Bhavana. And say, now actually come to the proper subject, that is the Dhatu Manasikara. So today's topic in that sense, Chattaroja Maha Bhuta, Chatunnanja Maha Bhutanang Upadaya Rupang. So now, how are we recognizing these four great elements? So that is using the elements meditation. Now, elements meditation actually evolves in many different phases. You can refer one interesting book compiled by the late Sayadaw U Pandita, the paving the way, so very beautifully he explained the phases. How this Dhatu Manasikara, the elements meditation would evolve. Say you are walking, for example. So when you are walking, so you get a kind of an understanding, yes, this body is walking. Now it is in the walking posture. So this is a very early understanding about this body. Previously it was sitting, but now it is walking. Who is walking? Body is walking. And say, now you are sitting. So you come from the sitting, walking posture, and now you are sitting. And now you can recognize, okay, this body appear like a tomb, appear like a pagoda, appear like a, kind of a structure. This is the sitting posture, in a still posture. Compared to the previous moving posture, now you are in a still posture. Who is in the still posture? The body is in the still posture. So that is one way of looking at it, the first phase of the Dhatu Manasikara. So properly understand in the posture in a way. So this body can go through various postures, and you are looking at it in proper terms. Okay, this body is right now standing, sitting, walking, lying down, in many different postures. Okay, this body can go through different postures. And now say you are looking at the body walking again and again, going from this end to the other end, this end to the other end, this end to the other end. Now as you do that repeatedly, you get a different way of interpretation. Previously, we were thinking, okay, I am doing walking meditation. But now, previously we got, okay, body is walking. But now you get a even more simplified version. You might feel, okay, it's very much like pedaling a bicycle. Very much like you are rowing a boat. Very much like a robot is going from this end to the other end. So that's another level, another understanding that you get. So all those very complicated, I am in Kalalgoda, I am in Sri Lanka, I am right now, say 4:45, I am in this particular path, I am so and so, I am doing walking meditation, all these complications, all these conventional stuff, now you all abandoned. So this is like, say, pedaling a bicycle. This is like rowing a boat. It's like a robot from this end to the other end, kind of movements are happening. Are we complicating our experience or are we simplifying our experience? Now you can see, now these are the most primitive experiences we all are going through. But in order to describe it, we have introduced so many terms, so many words, so many terminologies, conventions, and we have complicated our experience. But now, when you do, say, walking meditation, so that all added stuff are now being discarded, all your constructed stuff are being discarded, all concepts are being slowly abandoned. So your experience become more and more simple. How you are looking at it. Because are you allowed to think about it during that time? Are you thinking and doing walking meditation? No. Basically what you are supposed to do is you are simply experiencing what you are doing, isn't it? It is not that you are trying to interpret, it is not that you are trying to conceptualize the process. Rather, you have to keep the mind as much as possible very silent. So that's a mindfulness in a way. So mindfulness will take care, okay, don't think, don't proliferate, don't add your own likes and dislikes into the picture. You allow the body to walk naturally. As we discussed, allow the body to breathe naturally, and you become an outsider and look at it. Same thing. So you allow the body to walk from this end to the other end, from this end to the other end. Now body is walking. And you like an outsider, so you have a different perspective. Okay, it is like a robot going from this end to the other end, this end to the other end, repeating the process. It's like a biker who is simply paddling the bike. So it is going from this end to the other end, this end to the other end. So the way of looking at it become more simplified. So what happened to the concepts? Now fairly diminished, right? So still the rowing a boat still has some concepts, but very limited. Previously we are attributing a name, I am a male, I am a female, I am at Kalalgoda, I am in this particular footpath, the time is evening, so many things are there, but now all are gone. Now it's rowing a boat, paddling a bike. This is another level, another stage in your walking meditation. And after that only you come into the elements. So the very interesting phases this Sayadaw U Pandita had beautifully, precisely introduced here. And then only you are coming to the proper, the elements. So elements are not in a way concepts. So you are experiencing but not using names. Say, when you are keeping your foot on the ground, so you can feel hardness. So are you able to feel hardness? Are you able to experience hardness? And while experiencing hardness, do you really need a name, a term, a word to experience it? Maybe you need terms, names, words, sentences, grammar to explain it to another person during our discussion, maybe during the interview. So if you want to write a report, so then you need names, terms, everything is there. True. But while you are walking, while you are experiencing, you don't need even a name, you don't need even a label, you don't need even a word, isn't it? But you can directly experience. So the term here is very, very important. That how Buddha is telling, Rupang Abhanyasing. I directly knew form. Directly knew. So this direct knowledge. So direct knowledge and indirectly copying someone's information and memorizing it, completely different, isn't it? Now say someone is telling, a scientist is telling, okay, this form element, so it has protons, neutrons in this particular atom, okay, this 10 protons are there, 10 neutrons are there, so that it is named as this. So and you are memorizing it and you pass your chemistry, you get an A pass. So have you directly experienced? So here, so we are trying to directly experience without words, without names, without labels. So you are directly experiencing. But when we are directly experiencing, we are not attaching any kind of labels, concepts, conventions. Rather, you are connecting to your own, say, experience, and you know it instantaneously at this moment, right now. You are knowing it. But to describe it, you can use many languages, many words. That's a different story. But when you are doing it at that moment, so you are experiencing it directly. Now, likewise, so we need to experience, say, the characteristics of these 4 elements, and that is the way they are communicating with us. Now, we know in order to communicate among us, okay, among us we need a language, we need words, we need terms, we need past tense, present tense, all grammar. But in order to communicate with elements, what you need? Characteristics. Elements have their own individual characteristics. And say at a given moment, if you feel hardness, what is the element that you can assume which is operating there? Earth element. Say if you feel, say, cold, what is the element which is prominent there? That is the fire element. If it is more heaty, more high temperature, what is the element that is manifesting there? Again, fire element. So if you having little bit of knowledge, some theoretical understanding about these element characteristics may be useful. That's why if you consider the earth element, so we have typically 6 characteristics: hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, heaviness and lightness. So they have the lighter side as well as the gross side. So when you recognize hardness, now say if I am touching this clock, now I can feel hardness. So that indicates, okay, I am experiencing the characteristics of hardness which belongs to, for our easy reference, they are also for the earth element. Now I feel some weight, so that also comes for the earth element, weight. And sometimes I can interpret as it is lighter when compared to this one, okay, this is more lighter. I feel lighter. It's another characteristic of the earth element. Now, if you consider the flowing characteristics, it comes under the water element. And the cohesion, they comes together, binding together. That's another characteristic of the water element. The heat and cold are characteristics of the fire element. And the movements, vibrations, that is the air element. So basically, we are very much like simplifying our experience onto these characteristics. So during your elements meditation, what you need to do is to recognize these different characteristics. And don't think that you need to map while you are doing that process. Don't think that you need to map logically, okay, now I am experiencing hardness, or which one? Hardness is earth element or water element? Is it the proper way of doing it? No. Even you can forget it. Just try to recognize these characteristics, that's enough. So this is a very, primitive guidance given. Very, very fundamental guidance is available for these 4 elements are manifesting using these different characteristics, and they are very primitive in a way, very fundamental. And while doing your walking meditation, try to recognize them, that's all. You don't need to even attach a label. Maybe later, when you want to report, probably you can memorize what are the things I went through, and probably you can put it into words. At that time, you can say this earth element, water element, all these things. But during your experience, during your this meditation time, keep it very, very simple. So the mind becomes utterly simplified. So when mind becomes simplified, it becomes more concentrated. Because in order to think, so you have to think, you have to, memorize, remember, connect to your words, grammar. So you are complicating. But when you are simply recognizing this hardness, softness, smoothness, vibration, without even adding a label, so your mind becomes more and more concentrated. And you know only that. So at that moment, you don't know where you are. You don't know who you are. And you know only the characteristics of an element, that's all. So you can see, so we are completely abandoned that conceptual thinking. All the concepts that we have used to communicate among us, all are now abandoned. Now we have connected directly to the element characteristics. So we have to come to this level. So that's why sometimes it is very, very difficult to convince yogis. So why we are doing this kind of very primitive exercise? So have you all come here, Kalalgoda, to do this? Don't you walk? Don't you know how to walk? Are you practicing how to walk? Here, coming at Kalalgoda? No, I mean, this we all know. But through the exercise, we are trying to abandon all our colored, conventions crowded in our mind and come to the direct connection with these elements. So they are the most fundamental attributes within this whole physicality. Now, this we can directly experience. Anyone can experience, isn't it? So you don't need a microscope to know that. You don't need a very sophisticated scientific instrument to know it. Through your own, say, mindfulness, through your own concentrated mind, you can experience all these characteristics. Five o'clock. So therefore, this first part, actually coming all this way to connect to these individual characteristics, is therefore very, very important. It's a kind of a, gradually you are coming more deeper. So you are abandoning all the conventional stuff, all the burden you had, all the memories you had, terms you had, and you are discarding everything. And now you are experiencing these very subtle aspects of the elements. And this is what we call as the Pachatta Lakkana, individual characteristics. They are very unique to each and everyone. Say, the earth element has its own unique characteristics. Water element has its own unique characteristics. Then air element has its own unique characteristics. And the heat element has its own unique characteristics. Now we are experiencing that. In the Dhatu Manasikara, in the elements meditation, so coming to this stage or reaching this stage is very, very important. It doesn't mean that we need to comprehensively know all the 12 characteristics. So the approach practically we do is first of all establish mindfulness using one of the prominent characteristics. Say while you are walking, assume that the hardness is more prominent. That is, the characteristic is more easily understanding. So you are using that to establish mindfulness. Fine. And even before that, you do either left, right, or rising, lifting, moving, and all these different terms you can use so that your mindfulness remains with you. See, the bodily process and your awareness is fairly synchronized. So when it is available, now you can discard all labeling, right? Lifting, moving, placing, all that labels now you are discarding. But you are carefully observing each and every movement of your leg and how it is lifting, how it is moving, how it is placing, and once you place it on the ground, what you are experiencing. So slowly, you may connect to these element characteristics. So recognizing these elements characteristics, individual characteristics, is one of the important part. And we as adults, it would be difficult. But for the young, it may be easy. Isn't it? Because we have a lot of conventions, no? We learn a lot. And even while walking, I am thinking. So that's a problem. Now I need to discard thinking. You don't need to think, you just need to experience. And you are very much like a child now, isn't it? So these are very primitive, fundamental experience. Rather than being an adult, so be a beginner and experience it and try to enjoy it. So that's why we need to add a little bit of joy into the practice rather than feeling like more serious and trying to experience it. So add a little bit of joy that I am coming to my childhood experience like. Say as a child how you are walking. Isn't it? Say while holding your mother's hand, your father's hand, how you first walk. So like that, if you are able to experience this, what you are experiencing to your foot, then you can do it in a better way, rather than having a kind of burdened mind, rather than trying to achieve something, rather than putting a target. Try to enjoy. And then, because the concentrated mind is a joyful mind. Sukhino chittan samadhyati. So if you feel comfortable, if you feel, joyful, so that comfortable, joyful mind is capable of getting concentrated. Because we need fair amount of focused attention here. Because individually, precisely, we are trying to understand these subtle aspects available in the elements. And the fair amount of concentration is a must in that sense. But in order to concentrate, you need a comfort, you need kind of a happiness, you need a little bit of joy, then only the mind get concentrated, and then that concentrated mind is being used to recognize all these subtle characteristics. I hope to conclude it today here, and then we'll discuss the other parts tomorrow. And thank you very much for attentive listening. So today we have a little bit of sharing of merits. Priyani Gunawardhana. So they participated in offering dana in the morning as well as maybe in the lunch. And for the soldiers who died and disabled during the war in our country, and who helped me in various ways to offer the dana, and to pass the merits to my late beloved father and past relatives. So these are the good wishes she has, Priyani Gunawardhana. And again, we all as a group spend fair amount of time here, and we have practiced to the best of our ability, and we participate to a Dhamma discussion, and again now we listen to Dhamma teaching, and some of you are participated in serving the Sangha and doing various duties, helping others. And all these good merits that we have accumulated, let's share these merits with all the past relatives. We share these merits with all the celestial beings, and we share these merits with all whoever in need of merits. And we wish these merits help us also to understand Buddha's teaching and to be free from suffering. And while keeping these good wishes in our mind, let's recite the traditional verses. Ettavata hehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata hehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata hehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu sasanang. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu desanang. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu mamparang. Idang vo ñātīnaṃ hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṃ hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṃ hotu sukita hontu ñātayo. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiyā. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.